Have you ever looked at a familiar landscape through a foggy window? You think you know exactly what's out there, right? But then you wipe away the condensation and suddenly the shapes change. That's exactly what we're doing today. I'm the Return of the Bereans, and honestly, what we're about to dive into might just challenge everything you think you know about the supernatural world. We're talking about demons, Satan, and the powers of darkness. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've heard this all before in Sunday school or seen it in movies. But here's the deal. Much of that isn't actually in the Bible. I want to start with a bit of a shocker. A lot of what Christians believe about the powers of darkness doesn't actually come from a close study of the original Hebrew and Greek text. It's a bit unsettling, isn't it? Instead, our ideas are often filtered through centuries of church tradition. We've essentially let later interpretations guide our understanding of ancient words, and in the process, we've lost the original context. It's like a game of telephone that's lasted 2,000 years. So, here's the problem. When we rely solely on English translations, we lose the nuance. We start conflating different ancient terms into a single English word like demon. But the original writers were much more specific than that. Let's look at a concrete example. If you open most English Bibles, you'll find the word demon exactly 3 times in the entire Old Testament. Just 3. That's in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and the Psalms. Wait, only 3? Now, if you're a careful reader, you might wonder why they show up so rarely compared to the Gospels. I mean, in the New Testament, they seem to be everywhere, right? But here is the aha moment. Those Old Testament demons aren't the same thing. We've made a huge assumption that the demons of the ancient Near East are identical to the entities Jesus encountered. But when you look at the Hebrew terms like shadim, the context is entirely different. It's not a one-to-one match. And it gets even more interesting when we talk about Satan. Most of us assume the Shassan figure we meet in the early chapters of Job is the same devil we see in the New Testament. But exegetically, that's actually not feasible. I know that sounds like heresy to some. But in the original Hebrew of Job, the word has a definite article. It's ha-Satan, which literally means the adversary. It's a title or an office like a prosecuting attorney in a divine courtroom. It's not used as a proper name for a fallen rebel king in that specific context. If we ignore the grammar, we miss what the author of Job was actually trying to communicate about how the heavenly realm functions. It's about precision, you know? Let's move on to another big one. You've probably heard the story about how Satan and 1/3 of the angels rebelled against God before humans were even created. It's a staple of Christian tradition, right? Well, let me think. Where is that in the Bible? Actually, it's nowhere. Seriously, there is no passage in the entire Bible that describes an angelic rebellion involving 1/3 of the host before the creation of Adam and Eve. We've been reciting a story that isn't in the text. The only verse that even comes close is Revelation 12:4, which mentions a dragon's tail sweeping 1/3 of the stars. But wait, that passage is about the birth of the Messiah. That happened thousands of years after the primeval period. So why do we all believe it? Well, we've blended tradition, literature like Milton's Paradise Lost, and a few misunderstood verses into a narrative that the biblical authors themselves wouldn't recognize. It's a fascinating case of cultural memory overriding the source material. This brings us to the very idea of darkness. What do we actually mean by the powers of darkness? It's obviously not just about the absence of physical light. In the Bible, darkness is a powerful, heavy metaphor. There are roughly 200 references to darkness in Scripture. Almost every single one of them is used to create a contrast with God. If God is the source of love and life, then darkness represents the opposite, the negative, fearful human experiences. Think about it. What is the ultimate fearful experience for a human? It's death. It's the threat of the grave. That's why the realm of the dead and the entities associated with it are so closely linked to this concept of darkness. In the biblical mind, these supernatural entities were expelled from God's presence. They were cut off from the source of life, so they inhabit the dark places, not just caves or nighttime, but the metaphorical state of being separated from the divine. When we talk about dark powers, we're talking about forces that are hostile to God's order. They represent chaos, death, and the void. It's much deeper and, frankly, much scarier than the cartoonish versions we often see in popular culture. I mean, think about the implications. If our theology of the spiritual world is based on translations and traditions rather than the original context, What else might we be missing? How does this change our view of spiritual warfare? My goal here as the Return of the Bereans is to get us back to the text, to understand it on its own terms, not ours. We have to be willing to set aside our assumptions, even the ones that feel comfortable or traditional. It's about being like the Bereans of the book of Acts, examining the scriptures daily to see if these things are so. Sometimes the truth is more complex, more ancient, and far more interesting than the stories we've told ourselves. So, as we wrap up this look into the shadows, I want to leave you with a question. If you've been wrong about where the one-third story comes from, what other parts of your faith are waiting for a second look? Don't be afraid of the original languages or the ancient context. They aren't there to destroy your faith, but to sharpen it. They turn that blurry, foggy window into a clear view of the majestic and complex world the Bible actually describes. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the original text. Keep digging, keep questioning, and always return to the source. I'm the Return of the Bereans, and I'll see you next time as we continue to uncover what the Bible really says.